Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and a continuing series, the Unported Playlist, where I take a look at some of my favorite unported arcade games of all time. Today I've got a great one for you. It is the Cliffhanger Edward Randy. This is the most action-packed arcade game I feel like I'm ever going to talk about on Unported Playlist. It was made by Data East and it reminds me a lot of the intensity of Boogie Wings, another shmup that I've done a video on, and I'll leave a link in the description below. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps me out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down there as well, but I won't whip you in the face if you don't do it. I absolutely love the Cliffhanger Edward Randy. From start to finish, this game never relents. The minute you hit start to the minute the game ends, it is just pure action. What I love so much about this is it's not just a beat 'em up, it's kind of a genre in and of itself because it does so many different things. Right off the top, for a game that came out in 1990, this game looks absolutely spectacular. All the sprites moving around, there's going to be some sprite scaling soon. All of the mechanics of the platforming in this game, it is just a super fun game that puts a smile on your face when you start, and that grin's going to be there the entire time you are playing it. Obviously it's pretty easy, at least from the beginning, to see what it's all about. You have enemies and you need to hit them. But what I love that you just saw there is the perspective in the Cliffhanger Edward Randy, and I'll probably just call it Edward Randy from now on, is always changing. We went from a side scroller to basically a first person style aspect. We're now going into the screen and then suddenly everything shifts and we're right back to that more flat looking aspect ratio. And it's really interesting, and not many games back in the 90s would change it up like that. Sometimes you'd be going left to right, and then in the next stage you might be going into the screen, but it's very rare that a game would just decide to change the player perspective at the same time. Even though the game works in the exact same way, whether you're going to the left or right, or if you're going in or out of the screen, it's just a ton of fun to see that transition. Now that we have this giant train coming up here, a lot of what Edward Randy is also platforming, because we have that whip, and we have a really good ability to be able to climb on different aspects in the game. You're going to see, you get a little bit of a story here where your friend was kidnapped, but we need to get off this boat. We need to get off the boat quick. And the game is telegraphing that by putting enemies above you. What we need to do is use that whip and jump up here. It can take a second to get used to, but if you fall off the screen, you just take damage, you don't die, and that's a really good mechanic for a game asking you to do all this complex platforming. But what we need to do is get to the front of the train, and we're going to be doing that by running, jumping, climbing with our hands, and using that whip. There's so many different movement options open to you in this game every single time you're playing, and this train has a lot of different depth to it. We have 3 different layers, and you can see there the game will sometimes, if you get stuck, advance you forward too. So I would say that this game is very fair, and I think the developers at Data East understood that they were asking a lot of the player and something they'd probably never seen before, so they give you the ability to kind of get out of sticky situations without having to take a cheap death and pop more quarters into the cabinet. But the best part about this game is it's always changing up what it's doing. Now this entire stage takes place from behind the wheel, and we have full control of this car. We can go left and right, we can do wheelies with it, and we can stand up and whip the opponents as well. So depending on what you're encountering, there's going to be a different way to use it. We can even open the door up and knock those paratroopers off of their motorcycles. And I guess they're not paratroopers because they're not in parachutes. Ignore that completely. But you'll see here, we get these characters that come in the front and point backwards to tell those motorcycle opponents where to go to. Definitely has a real Indiana Jones World War II style vibe to it. I don't want to use the name of the enemy that the Allies fought in World War II. Who knows what YouTube likes to flag, but you kind of get where I'm going with that. And you can even knock your opponents into the rock walls and destroy them that way just by pushing them with your vehicle. This game is just so much fun. It's always throwing something new at you. You're always seeing more spectacle. You're jumping this car off the ridge there. You can push your opponents off the cliff face to their death. It's just always giving you something new and unique to check out, and I love it about this game. But as good as this game looks, it also has an incredible soundtrack, so I'll probably let you listen to it twice. But go ahead and listen for like the next 30 seconds or so just to get a little bit of that Edward Randy flair, and I'll be right back. And this is part of the boss fight, and it is quite interesting. So enjoy. got that classic adventure game soundtrack going for it, and even the end stage music is awesome. Don't worry, I'll let you listen to it a little bit more because it does change up. But I love how Stage 3 is just a complete continuation of Stage 2. We beat the boss, and then we are running forward, trying to avoid getting run over by this truck. When we jump onto it, we're going to have other trucks coming in from the side. We're going to have to jump back and forth from one end of the screen to the other on this truck, defeating all the different opponents that we have in front of us. And that's what I mean when I say this game is just unrelenting action from start to finish. It's always doing something interesting, new, and unique. And even now you think you've seen everything, but that truck explodes, and we're now running down this ravine trying to avoid the rocks. I don't do a great job, I could have done better. And there's this giant land tank coming up behind us that's now going to be spitting out enemies that we need to fight. This game is just pure spectacle, and that's what I love about it. And Data East did a really good job in the early 90s making these games that were big and spectacular, and that's why I mentioned Boogie Wings, another really strange and unique game that's just so full of charm and so unique that you can't help but love it. But you'll see we cleared that stage just by jumping around, and now we have to be going up into the screen. It's just always giving you something new and unique, and now we get to really flex that whip and swing, because if we end up at the bottom of the screen, we're going to be taking damage or taking a death. But you can see the entire time this gigantic mechanical skull with these electrical tentacles is coming towards us, and this is when the game just pivots to being weird, because some of the enemies we're going to be facing forward from here, including the bosses, just get really strange and unique, and you're not quite sure what's going on in the world of the Cliffhanger Edward Randy, but you know you're there for it, and you definitely want to enjoy it and check it out more. Like I said, this soundtrack is just absolutely spectacular, so now that we're moving on, I want to give you 30 more seconds just to listen to it with this intense biplane action going on. But enjoy, and I'll be right back. And that's just one of my favorite parts of this game in and of itself, is just the soundtrack and how lively it is and how much it marries to all of the different crazy things going on. Because the skull we fought in the previous stage is now back out, and it's got hands and it's coming for us. And even though it's mechanical, it looks like that mechanical skin is rotting from the skull and dripping down, making it look even more gross. And the sad part about the Cliffhanger Edward Randy is just how little I hear this game ever mentioned. No one talks about it. I don't really hear many posts about it, but it is a game that everybody should play because it's absolutely a spectacular arcade game. Now, if you want to buy a board for this, bring your wallet. It's not cheap. I can't remember the last time I saw it for sale, but I think it was in the 4 digits, and I'm sure it's only gone up from there because everything in gaming has been getting ridiculously expensive in the last 2 years. But moving on to the last stage, it's even more spectacular. You're on 2 different biplanes, you're jumping back and forth, you can fall to your death, and this is all going on in real time. If you're into beat-em-ups, if you're into side-scrolling games, if you really like sprite scaling, the Cliffhanger Edward Randy has some of the best action you're going to find, in Data East, when they made a good arcade game, could stand toe-to-toe with SNK, Sega, Namco, Taito, and Capcom. They didn't always reach the same lofty ambitions that those big companies did, but when they did something like the Cliffhanger Edward Randy, they could go toe-to-toe and match the best on any day of the week. Short of that, if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. I'd love hearing from you guys. Tell me if you've ever played this game and what you think of it. I'll be back next Sunday with more Unported. Do me a huge favor, hit like and subscribe. We've got videos throughout the week as well, and I'll see you guys next time. Let's make this jump. Bye-bye.